Elias Morrow stared at the fading light of Vesper 9, the abandoned starport looming like a rusted skeleton against the blackness of space. He had dreamed of this place for years, not for its technology or its reputation or the wealth it might hide, but for the one thing he thought he wanted above all: silence. Real silence. No politics, no orders, no endless reminders of the crew he had lost on the frontier. Just him and the emptiness of the galaxy. Docking was harder than he expected. The airlock had not been used in decades. Rust streaked the metal panels, and the automated systems flickered weakly as if warning him away. He gritted his teeth and ran the controls manually, overriding warnings, checking seals, and guiding the starship carefully into position. The docking was rough, but he made it. His small human hands had done what decades of automated systems could not. Stepping onto the starport's main platform, he inhaled the recycled air through his mask and felt the weight of silence press against him. The place smelled of dust, burned circuits, and old metal. Every echo of his boots seemed louder than it should be. He ran diagnostics on the mainframe, patched failing life support lines, and activated emergency power circuits. One by one, the systems hummed weakly back to life. He had no crew, no help, no one to rely on, just his own skills and stubborn will. "This is it," he whispered to himself. "No one can follow me here. No one can stop me." His voice sounded strange in the empty halls, bouncing back to him like a ghost. For a moment he allowed himself a small grin. Finally he could think, plan, and breathe without the constant pressure of command. But the quiet was uneasy. Sensors flickered with faint anomalies, tiny spikes of energy with no clear source. At first he dismissed them. The starport systems were old, faulty, unpredictable. But the feeling grew, prickling at the back of his neck, crawling into his thoughts. It was as if the starport itself was awake, watching him, testing him. He shook his head. "Get a grip, Morrow? Old circuits don't have eyes." Even so, he could not ignore the sense of being observed. At night, in the low red glow of the emergency lights, shadows seemed to move just outside his line of vision. He kept his pulse rifle close, though he knew the starport should be empty. Still, he checked every corridor, every hatch, every sensor. His heart beat faster than usual, but he kept control. Humans were good at survival, not just because of strength but because of focus. Because of courage. Because we never give up when the odds are against us. By the second day he had explored the main hangar, the control towers, the living quarters. Rusted furniture leaned against walls, panels were cracked and scorched, and old tools were scattered like the remains of a life long gone. Yet Elias found small victories. He repaired a broken oxygen recycler, managed to patch the central terminal enough to monitor the starport's energy flow, and even rigged a rudimentary comm system. Alone, with nothing but his hands and his mind, he made the old place work. He was tired but proud. Then he noticed it. A small power spike near the old docking bay. He froze, staring at the readout. It was faint, almost invisible, and probably meaningless. But he felt the familiar stir of tension, the one that told him he could not afford to ignore it. He approached slowly, pulse rifle ready. Every step echoed against metal walls. Nothing moved. The bay was empty. The air was still. He exhaled, trying to calm his nerves. Probably a glitch. A failing sensor. Nothing more. But Elias did not feel calm. Not entirely. The feeling that someone, or something, was here lingered. A shadow flickered across the corner of his vision, too quick to track. He spun, weapon raised, searching. Nothing. He forced his mind back to the facts. No one had access, no one could reach this place so fast. It had been abandoned for decades. And yet, the starport was old, but he knew how to read systems, how to notice when something was off. That flicker had been real. Something had changed. He retreated to the control hub and double-checked all the access logs, even though he already knew they would be blank. Still, his instincts screamed at him, and instincts had kept humans alive for centuries. He mapped out the starport, noted potential points of entry, and prepared basic defenses, improvised tripwires, emergency lights, and portable drones he could deploy quickly, just in case. As he sat in the central hub, staring at the screens, he allowed himself to wonder, had he truly bought a place to die alone, or had he stumbled into something bigger? He was just a man. Alone. But he had skills, patience, and courage. Those would have to be enough. And then the sensors blinked again. Not faint this time. A clear energy surge moving toward the central hub. Elias froze. He gripped his rifle tightly, heart pounding. Someone, or something, was aboard. He could not see it yet, but the numbers did not lie. He swallowed hard, setting his jaw. This was no longer just isolation. This was a test. A challenge. And humans, Elias thought grimly, never give up. The shadow moved again, faster, closer, and for the first time, Elias realized that the silence he had sought might not have been real. Someone, or something, was awake. Waiting. Watching. And the real trial was about to begin. Elias Morrow tightened his grip on the pulse rifle, every muscle coiled like a spring. The energy surge had grown sharper on the sensors, moving steadily through the starport's corridors. Whoever, or whatever, was out there was no glitch. No old system failure could create readings this precise. Elias's mind raced, plotting his options. Escape was impossible. The docking bay doors were corroded shut. The airlock controls were slow, unreliable. He had nowhere to run. The starport itself would be both trap and battlefield. He advanced cautiously, boots echoing against the metal floor. Every corridor seemed to stretch longer than it should, every shadow sharper, darker. His heart thumped in his chest, yet he forced himself to breathe evenly. Fear had its place, it sharpened senses, but panic would get him killed. Humans survived because they adapted faster than predators. They fought smarter, not just harder. Elias was about to prove it. At the junction of two main corridors, the sensors flared violently. A figure appeared at the far end. Elias froze. It was tall, armored, and moving deliberately. He had seen enough alien tech schematics to recognize advanced plating, shields, and sensors built to hunt, not talk. Whoever this was, they were far stronger than him, faster than him, and they knew how to kill. Elias counted to 3 in his mind, then charged. He fired a warning shot that ricocheted off the wall, sending sparks flying. The figure halted, then adjusted its stance like it had expected him. Elias ducked into a side corridor, improvising. The walls here were narrow. He could control the approach. He rigged a broken door to slam shut at the right moment, a makeshift trap, but the alien moved with uncanny intelligence, avoiding the falling metal like it anticipated every move. Elias cursed under his breath. They were testing him. Everything about this starport, the flickers, the anomalies, was no accident. And humans, he reminded himself, survived these moments not by giving in to fear, but by thinking faster than the enemy. He darted down another hallway, activating an emergency power surge that sent sparks flying and temporarily blinded the intruder. That was his advantage. Small, temporary, but enough to keep him alive. The intruder recovered quickly. Its armor gleamed faintly under the emergency lights, sensors glowing. Elias could see the intent. It was not here for conversation. It was here to neutralize him. But humans did not give up. He led it into the central machinery hall, where rusted cables hung like vines. A calculated misstep would collapse part of the ceiling, a risk for both of them. He paused, measured the angles, then triggered a makeshift pulley system. Steel beams crashed down, narrowly missing him while pinning the alien to the floor. He had bought a few moments, nothing more. Elias sprinted to the central hub, deploying small drones he had repaired earlier. They were crude, almost laughable compared to the intruder's armor, but they moved fast and could delay or distract. He directed them to swarm the corridor, creating confusion. The alien paused, recalculating. Elias saw it hesitate, a fraction of a second that humans could exploit. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was action despite it. That hesitation was everything. He ducked behind a control panel and caught his breath, eyes scanning every monitor. The intruder moved, methodical, relentless, but Elias was already preparing. Using patched systems, he rerouted emergency lights to flash in patterns designed to overload sensors. He knew alien tech often relied on predictable visual cues. If he could blind it even briefly, he could escape or regroup. His hands moved quickly, flipping switches, recalibrating circuits, improvising with the limited power left in the starport. Minutes stretched like hours. Sweat ran down his temple. His pulse raced. The intruder had adapted, now anticipating his tactics. Elias realized brute force would not save him. He had to outthink it. He studied the patterns, the rhythm of its movements, and noticed a flaw. It treated the starport as a machine it could control, but humans had unpredictability built in. Instinct, creativity, determination. Traits the alien could not predict. He baited it toward a corridor with a failing gravity stabilizer. Sparks flew as the floor buckled slightly, and the intruder stumbled, a small misstep but critical. Elias did not hesitate. He launched a drone directly at its legs, tripping it further, then dove through a side passage, breathing hard, heart hammering. He had escaped, for now, but he knew this was only the beginning. Whoever had sent this hunter, or whatever entity it was, would not stop easily. Elias crouched behind a panel, scanning the starport schematics on a cracked tablet. This was more than a break-in. This was a test, a warning, or both. The intruder was strong, intelligent, and clearly capable of killing him. Yet Elias felt something else rising in him: hope. Humans survived because they refused to surrender. Humans adapted when logic and courage intersected. And humans, him, could turn even impossible odds into advantage. He patched together a plan: lure the intruder toward the old control towers, where the starport's failing energy nodes could be manipulated. If he timed it right, he could trap the alien by himself more time, maybe even communicate with the systems that had remained silent for decades. But he had to act quickly. Every second he delayed, the intruder grew closer, more dangerous. A flicker on the sensors caught his eye, another anomaly. It moved differently this time, faster, sharper. Elias froze. The starport was alive in ways he hadn't understood. And now he realized survival would require more than courage or tricks. It would require the intelligence, determination, and heart that only humans possessed. He clenched his jaw, gripping his rifle, and whispered to himself, "Let's see if you know what humans can do." The corridor ahead went dark, and a shadow slipped silently from the corner of his vision. The real threat had arrived. Elias Morrow froze as the shadow vanished down the corridor. His pulse raced, but he forced himself to breathe steadily. He had survived worse: frontier missions, hostile planets, collapsing outposts. But this felt different. This was the unknown, intelligent, and patient. He moved slowly, eyes scanning every angle, every flicker of light. Then the sensors blinked again, this time a pattern. Energy spikes clustered near the central hub. Elias realized the intruder, or whatever it was not wandering aimlessly. It was searching. And it wanted something. That knowledge, he thought, could give him leverage. Humans survived not just with strength but with intelligence. If he could understand its purpose, he could turn the starport itself into a weapon. He moved carefully through the rusted corridors, checking old schematics stored on his cracked tablet. The starport was built decades ago, long before most humans had mapped the sector. Its systems were archaic but ingenious, fail-safes buried under layers of technology. Elias remembered every lesson from his years in the frontier. Machines have rules, and rules can be exploited. If he could predict the intruder's movements, he could manipulate those systems to survive. The central hub was a tangle of sparks and shadow. Elias ducked behind a control console, heart hammering, and studied the patterns on the sensors. Then he saw it, a faint holographic outline of a human figure. He froze. A human? He had assumed alien, assumed predator. But the silhouette was clearly human in design, even posture. Suddenly, a holographic panel flickered on, casting pale light across the hub. Words appeared, not in any language he immediately recognized, but in glyphs that shifted and reformed. He leaned closer, reading patterns, analyzing structure. The panel activated fully, displaying a recorded message. A woman's face emerged, strong, calm, eyes sharp with intelligence. "Who are you?" Elias whispered. His pulse quickened. The woman's voice filled the hub, measured and deliberate. "I am Dr. Elia Kane. You have found my starport. It was never abandoned. It was waiting." Elias's mind raced. Dr. Kane, the renowned xenoarchaeologist who vanished decades ago. The legend said she discovered technology older than any human civilization, left by an alien race long gone. No one had seen her since she disappeared. And now, here she was, speaking to him from a starport that should have been empty. "You've proven yourself worthy," the message continued. "Only those with human ingenuity, courage, and determination may unlock what lies within. The systems you see are not simply machinery, they are a test. A measure. A safeguard against those who would misuse what we've discovered." Elias swallowed hard. He realized the energy spikes, the shadow, the intruder, it was all a test. The starport itself had been rigged to respond to human intuition and creativity. He had passed the first stage by surviving. Now came the second, solving the challenge the starport presented. The mainframe, cracked and sparking, displayed a complex alien lock. Its symbols shifted and rearranged with every attempt to interface. Elias studied them, tracing the logic patterns, noticing subtle rules embedded in the glyphs. It was like a puzzle designed for a mind that could reason under pressure. And humans, he reminded himself, were exceptional at this. They thrived in situations others could not predict, improvising solutions where machines failed. Hours passed as he worked. Sweat dripped down his forehead, his fingers moving quickly across controls, rerouting failing circuits, recalibrating sensors. Each failure taught him something. Each adjustment brought him closer. And all the while, the intruder, whatever had been tracking him, remained outside, patient and waiting. Elias realized it would not leave until he solved the puzzle. Then a breakthrough. He noticed the glyphs responded to sequence patterns in ways he had overlooked. Symbol clusters that mirrored natural human problem-solving logic. He aligned the sequences, applied a pattern recognition algorithm he had improvised, and entered the final command. The mainframe responded immediately, flooding the hub with pale, blue energy. Holographic panels expanded, revealing schematics of terraforming devices, energy storage systems and alien star maps. Elias's breath caught. This was more than knowledge. This was power, tools capable of reshaping planets, maps of systems long thought unreachable, and technology humans had no right to imagine. Yet it was no accident. The Starport had chosen him, tested him, and now trusted him. Only a human with determination, intelligence, and courage could have unlocked it. Suddenly the intruder appeared in the doorway. Elias tensed, ready to fire, but froze again. It was no longer hostile. Elia's holographic instructions had shifted its programming. It moved aside, allowing him to pass, almost as if acknowledging his achievement. Humans survived not because they dominated blindly, but because they understood, adapted, and earned respect, even from forces far stronger than themselves. Elias stepped toward the core of the Starport, feeling a mix of exhilaration and weight. He had uncovered secrets lost for centuries. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy outside was full of those who would kill for this knowledge, exploit it, or destroy it. Survival meant more than solving the puzzle. It meant protecting what humans could achieve against enemies who had no such restraint. He stood in the center of the hub, lights of the Starport flickering to life, systems humming around him. The place felt alive, almost sentient, acknowledging him as more than a visitor. Elias smiled grimly. Humans had once again proven that courage, intelligence, and sheer determination could face the impossible and endure. But the galaxy would not wait, and neither could he. Beyond the Starport, threats loomed, waiting for the knowledge he now held. And somewhere the real challenge, the real danger, was preparing to strike. Elias tightened his grip on his pulse rifle. For the first time he felt ready. The Starport had tested him, but the universe would test him even more. And humans, he knew, would always rise. The sensors blinked again, sharper this time. Something was coming. Elias Morrow didn't wait for the warning lights to turn red. The sensors were screaming, enemy ships had arrived. Not one but a squadron, their weapons locked, engines burning with intent. He had anticipated trouble, but nothing this fast, nothing this precise. The Starport wasn't just a puzzle anymore, it was a battlefield. He sprinted through the corridors, checking the schematics etched into his tablet. The energy nodes in the control towers were unstable, fragile, but if he rerouted power just right, they could generate an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to disable the approaching ships. It was risky, a miscalculation could tear the Starport apart and himself along with it. But humans survived impossible odds by acting, not hesitating. Courage, intelligence, and determination, these were his weapons now. He reached the primary control tower, heart pounding. Sparks from damaged circuits illuminated his path, painting jagged shadows across the walls. The intruder, the armored being that had hunted him before, stood at the base of the tower. It paused, then regarded him. Elias realized something important. It wasn't here to fight him anymore. It had recognized human ingenuity and now acted as an ally, or at least as a neutral observer. Humans had a way of earning respect even from superior forces, and this was one of those moments. Elias assessed the tower's energy nodes. The wiring was brittle, one wrong move could trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. But the pulse he could generate would give him the upper hand against the squadron. He grabbed spare conduits, rerouted circuits, and improvised with makeshift stabilizers. Every movement was precise, deliberate, calculated. Sweat poured down his face. Every heartbeat counted. He could feel the universe holding its breath. Outside, the first enemy ship fired. The hull shuddered and alarms screamed, but Elias ignored it. Timing was everything. He initiated the overload sequence, diverting power from secondary circuits into the main nodes. Sparks flew, lights flickered violently, and the entire tower hummed with stored energy. He glanced at the sensors. The ships were closing fast. He had one shot. With a deep breath, Elias triggered the pulse. The energy nodes roared to life, releasing a shockwave that surged outward in perfect synchronization. Lights across the Starport blinked in blinding patterns. Outside, enemy ships shuddered as their shields flickered, engines stuttered, and systems glitched. One ship collided with a debris field, another was flung into the void. The squadron faltered. Human ingenuity had turned the tables against a superior force. But the pulse had a cost. The tower quaked violently. Metal groaned. Elias's improvised stabilizers were failing. The starport might collapse if he didn't act fast. He sprinted along catwalks, bypassing sparking panels and falling debris, recalibrating nodes on the fly. He had to ensure the pulse would disable the enemy ships without destroying the starport itself. Humans survived by calculating risk, improvising, and acting decisively under pressure. The intruder moved to assist, using its advanced sensors to stabilize critical conduits. Elias realized the being had been a test, but now it was also a measure of his worth. Together, they guided the remaining energy through auxiliary channels. The starport shuddered violently, groaning like it might collapse, but Elias stayed calm, focused, determined. Then the final strike. With a deft adjustment, he redirected the last surge into a narrow beam that intersected the enemy formation. Their weapons fried, engines stalled, and all movement ceased. The squadron drifted, immobilized, trapped by human foresight and courage. Elias let out a long breath. He had done it. He had survived. He had turned impossible odds into victory. He slumped against the console, exhausted but alive. The intruder regarded him once more, then silently departed, leaving him alone in the glowing hub. Elias realized the being had been part of the challenge but also a witness. Humans earned their place in the galaxy not by strength alone, but by courage, intelligence, and heart. Outside, the starport system stabilized. The energy pulse had done more than disable the enemy ships. It had awakened dormant technology, ancient systems that humans could now access. Terraforming schematics, interstellar maps, and energy reserves lay within reach. Elia Kane's instructions echoed in his mind. Only a human could unlock this, and only a human could survive the trials to protect it. Elias felt a mix of exhilaration and exhaustion. He had faced an enemy far stronger than himself, navigated a collapsing starport, and harnessed ancient technology to turn the battle in his favor. But he also understood the responsibility he now carried. Humans could achieve the impossible, but every action carried consequences. He could not afford mistakes. He walked through the control hub, inspecting every panel, every conduit, ensuring the starport would remain functional. This was no longer a place to die alone. It was a bastion, a beacon for humans who dared to survive, to explore, and to fight against impossible odds. Humans had a stubborn brilliance, an ability to adapt, to endure, to overcome. And Elias had proved it. As he paused to catch his breath, a faint hum filled the starport, new energy flowing through ancient circuits. It was alive in a way that demanded respect. And Elias realized something. The real test had just begun. The galaxy outside would send others eager to claim this knowledge. He would have to protect it. He would have to fight again. And humans never gave up. He tightened his grip on his pulse rifle, his eyes scanning the monitors. The enemy ships were disabled, but more could be coming. And yet he felt no fear. He felt clarity. Humans survived against impossible odds because they refused to surrender. Because they adapted. Because they acted when others froze. Elias Morrow, once alone in a decaying starport, had become a force the galaxy could not ignore. The starport pulsed around him, humming with potential. And somewhere in the distance, the shadows of the universe were already moving, unaware that a human had just rewritten what was possible. The next challenge was coming. But Elias was ready. Humans always were. Elias Morrow stood in the central hub, the hum of the starport echoing around him like a heartbeat. He had survived the enemy attack, navigated collapsing corridors, and harnessed the ancient technology that had lain dormant for centuries. The pulse of energy through the starport's systems felt alive, almost aware of him. For a moment he allowed himself to imagine what this place could become. A sanctuary for explorers, a hub of knowledge, a symbol of what humans could achieve when no one else believed it was possible. Then a sound came from the far end of the corridor, soft footsteps on the metal floor, precise, deliberate. Elias froze, pulse rifle ready. The intruder, the shadow that had stalked him, could return, or it could be something worse. But the footsteps grew closer, and a figure emerged into the red glow of emergency lights. It was human. Elia Kane. She moved with quiet authority, her eyes scanning the hub and landing on him. For a moment she said nothing, simply observing. Elias lowered his weapon slightly, not out of fear but respect. He had heard her message, seen her holographic face, but now the reality of the woman who had vanished for decades stood before him. He felt a surge of both awe and relief. You survived, she said finally, her voice steady but carrying an edge of surprise. I wasn't sure anyone could. Elias swallowed. I didn't just survive, he replied. I protected this place. I solved the systems. And I stopped them from taking it. His chest heaved, sweat running down his face. I had no help. No backup. Just human ingenuity. Elia stepped closer, her gaze sweeping the hub, the glowing panels, the stabilized energy nodes. Humans always have a way of surprising me, she said. Your courage, your intelligence, your persistence. You proved what this starport was waiting for. You passed the test, Elias Morrow. And that means you're trusted now. Trusted with knowledge that could shape civilizations. Elias felt the weight of her words. This was more than recognition. It was responsibility. Humans had survived for millennia not because they were the strongest species, but because they were adaptable, determined, and willing to take risks when others would hesitate. He realized in that moment that he was living proof. Outside, the enemy ships had retreated, disabled and drifting. The galaxy had tested him and he had won, not through brute force alone but through courage, logic, and the stubbornness that defined humanity. The starport itself seemed to acknowledge it, systems stabilizing, lights glowing steady, energy flowing through corridors and panels like veins in a living being. Elia guided him to the main terminal, showing him schematics of terraforming devices, maps of unexplored systems and energy cores that could sustain human colonies for centuries. All of this was left for someone like you, she said. Someone who could survive alone, think under pressure and make the right choices when it mattered most. Someone who embodies humanity's best qualities. Elias ran his hands over the holographic maps, feeling the enormity of what lay before him. He could terraform barren worlds, map unexplored star systems, preserve ancient knowledge lost to time. The responsibility was immense, but so was the opportunity. Humans had a stubborn brilliance, and now he held proof that even against overwhelming odds, one person could alter the course of history. Why me? He asked quietly. Why now? Elia studied him, eyes piercing but kind. Because humans are unpredictable, resilient, courageous. We needed someone who could act when others would falter. Someone who could prove that even alone humans never give up. You showed what it means to survive, and to protect. Elias felt a swell of pride tempered with humility. He had gone to the starport expecting isolation, expecting silence. Instead he had found challenge, danger, and ultimately purpose. The galaxy had tested him and he had passed. But he knew this was just the beginning. Knowledge this powerful would attract others. Some allies, some enemies. He would have to continue to act, continue to protect. Humanity demanded nothing less. He looked around the hub again. The systems were alive, humming with potential, and for the first time he felt that this place could be more than a refuge. Could be a beacon. A demonstration of what humans could achieve. Courage, intelligence, morality, and determination, even in the face of impossible odds. Elia placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture of approval. You've done more than survive, Elias. You've preserved humanity's legacy. And one day, others will follow the path you've carved. Elias nodded, taking a deep breath. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but he had never felt more alive. Humans survived because they adapted, because they acted when others hesitated, because they refused to surrender. He was a human and that was enough to face whatever came next. The starport's lights glowed brighter, the energy flowing like a heartbeat across the corridors. Outside, the galaxy waited, full of challenges, threats, and opportunities. But Elias Morrow had proven that humans could face the impossible and rise victorious. He had been alone. He had been tested. And now he had become a guardian, a hero, a symbol of what humanity could achieve. For the first time in decades, the starport was not abandoned. It was alive. And humanity had a new legend, a man who went to die alone, and emerged a hero carrying the hope, courage, and brilliance of an entire species. The universe was vast, full of dangers and wonders alike. But Elias Morrow had shown that a single human, armed with determination and ingenuity, could face it all, and survive. And somewhere, deep in the blackness of space, the galaxy seemed to acknowledge it. Humans had arrived. And they would not be stopped.